when Donald Trump issued warnings to companies like Google and Microsoft, especially around hiring foreign talent, particularly from India. The media quickly framed it as a political or immigration issue. On the surface, it might seem like a concern about protecting American jobs or limiting visa programs, but a deeper look reveals that these statements are rooted in something far more complex and revealing: a discomfort with the shifting balance of global intellectual power. Trump's language wasn't just about economic protectionism. It was a signal, a reaction to a growing realization that American dominance in the tech world is no longer guaranteed. That dominance is being challenged not by armies or governments, but by brilliant minds, many of whom come from India. For much of the 20th and early 21st centuries, the United States stood at the center of technological innovation. Silicon Valley was the undisputed leader of the digital revolution, a place where ideas turned into billion-dollar empires. The assumption was that leadership, creativity, and breakthrough innovation would always originate from America. But the rise of Indian-origin executives in top U.S. tech firms has quietly rewritten that story. These leaders aren't just playing supporting roles. They are the ones making decisions that shape the global future of AI, cloud computing, cybersecurity, and more. And this reality has begun to unnerve those who once believed that leadership in tech would forever remain an American birthright. Trump's warnings, therefore, should not be viewed purely through a political lens. They are symptoms of a deeper anxiety about a world where influence is no longer centralized. The fact that Indian professionals are not just entering the tech workforce but rising to lead it challenges the old frameworks of power and identity. It forces policymakers and business leaders to confront a new truth that leadership today is earned through intellect, adaptability, and global thinking, not just by being born in a certain country. The traditional gatekeepers of opportunity are being bypassed, and this decentralization is difficult for some to accept. The discomfort is compounded by the fact that many of these Indian-origin CEOs come from modest backgrounds. They are not heirs to corporate empires or products of elite Western privilege. Their success stories are rooted in perseverance, sacrifice, and merit. This makes their ascent even more significant because it highlights a meritocratic system that is not controlled by any one nation. When someone like Sundar Pichai, who grew up in a middle-class household in India, becomes the CEO of Google, it sends a clear message that brilliance can emerge from anywhere. And that message disrupts the notion of American exceptionalism not through defiance but through undeniable performance. What makes this shift even more impactful is that Indian leaders are not just replicating American models of leadership. They are redefining them. Many of them bring a leadership style that blends technical expertise with empathy and innovation, with social responsibility. Their approach is collaborative, global, and inclusive. They are not only changing companies, they are changing the way leadership itself is perceived. This evolution stands in contrast to more traditional top-down styles of management that have historically dominated American corporations. And in that contrast lies another source of unease, the recognition that the new model may be more effective in a connected world. Ultimately, Trump's warnings reflect a reactive stance to the realization that control is slipping, not in the form of military power or economic collapse, but in the form of influence. Who sets the direction of the future? Who gets to lead the world's most important platforms? And who decides the priorities of tomorrow's technologies? The rise of Indian talent in these key roles is not a fluke. It's the result of a global meritocracy that has begun to emerge. And while that reality may be uncomfortable for some to accept, it is increasingly impossible to ignore. Across Silicon Valley and beyond, Indian-origin professionals are thriving not because of where they come from, but because of what they bring to the table: a fierce hunger to learn, a relentless work ethic, and an unmatched resilience in the face of adversity. In a country like India, where competition begins early and resources are limited, young minds are trained to fight for every opportunity. They grow up learning how to solve problems creatively, how to adapt, and how to survive in tough conditions. These experiences do not limit them. They shape them into sharp, capable individuals who can thrive under pressure. When this mindset is transplanted into the resource-rich environment of American tech companies, it becomes a powerful force of innovation. Education plays a crucial role in this journey. India's emphasis on mathematics, science, and engineering produces millions of graduates every year. While not all institutions provide world-class infrastructure, many still manage to cultivate brilliance. When these individuals rise through the ranks of global tech firms, they are not chosen because of diversity quotas or tokenism. They earn their place by consistently delivering value. They understand not only the coding languages but the language of global markets, customers, and teams. They often act as bridges between the East and West, bringing together different cultures, work ethics, and perspectives. Their unique ability to navigate both worlds makes them especially valuable in today's interconnected global economy. This growing influence also disrupts old narratives about leadership. The stereotypical image of a successful CEO, white male American-born, is giving weight to something more inclusive and more reflective of the real world. India origin leaders are demonstrating that success is not about fitting into a mold, but about breaking it. They lead with humility, curiosity, and a strong sense of purpose. They listen more, they collaborate better, and they often lead with long-term vision rather than short-term ego. These traits, often rooted in Indian cultural values of patience, respect, and lifelong learning, are proving highly effective in a rapidly changing global landscape. In this context, when powerful political figures express concern about the rise of Indian talent, it reflects an outdated view, one that still associates leadership with geography. But the world is moving on. The real competition today is not between countries but between mindsets. It is not about where you are from, but what you are made of. Talent does not carry a passport. It speaks the universal language of ideas, effort, and impact. And wherever it is found, whether in India, China, Brazil, or the United States, it deserves a place at the top. In recent years, the global technology landscape has experienced a dramatic shift, not just in terms of innovation, but in terms of leadership. The CEOs of some of the most influential tech companies in the world, Google, Microsoft, IBM, Adobe, and formerly Twitter, are of Indian origin. Sand Pichai, Satya Nadella, Arvind Krishna, Shantanu Narayan, and Paragrao are not just names in the news. They are the architects of the digital age. Their rise represents more than just individual success stories. It signifies the ascent of Indian intellectual power on a global stage, and it is forcing the world, including influential political figures like Donald Trump, to pay attention. When people hear that the heads of Google and Microsoft are Indian-born, some might assume it is coincidence, but it is not. These individuals come from diverse regions of India, often from humble beginnings, and have climbed their way up not through privilege or wealth, but through greed education and relentless perseverance. Santa Pichai grew up in a 2-room apartment in Chennai. They bring resilience, the kind built by growing up in challenging environments. They bring adaptability developed by navigating 2 vastly different cultures, Indian roots and Western corporate worlds. This is where the underlying discomfort begins to show, especially in political rhetoric. When Donald Trump voices concern or issues warnings to companies like Google and Microsoft, it is not simply about job outsourcing or H-1B visas. It reflects a deeper unease, a realization that the balance of intellectual power is shifting. The traditional image of American-born CEOs dominating Silicon Valley is being replaced by diverse international faces, many of them Indian. For a nation long used to being the sole superpower in innovation, this is a significant psychological adjustment. Their leadership is also symbolic. It inspires millions of students across India, showing them that it is possible to dream beyond borders. It challenges outdated stereotypes in boardrooms, proving that capability doesn't come with a passport. And it sends a message to the world that the future of tech will be built not by one nation, but by the best minds from around the world. And in that future, Indians are not waiting to be invited. They are already at the table. Today, we dive into a headline that's been raising eyebrows around the world. Why Trump fears Indians. The real reason behind his warning to Google and Microsoft. A statement like this demands more than just attention. It demands understanding. It demands clarity. And most importantly, it demands context. Now, let's be clear. For years, global leadership, especially in technology, has been dominated by a narrow circle of identities and origins. The sudden, consistent emergence of Indian origin leaders in high-ranking positions at companies like Google, Microsoft, IBM, and Adobe disrupts the traditional narrative. It replaces the idea that leadership has a standard look, voice, or background with a new idea that leadership is about ideas, adaptability, and impact. This shift doesn't come quietly. It gets noticed. And when it begins to shift power structures, when decision starts to look more diverse and globally representative, there are always those who react defensively. The world has long respected visible power, military, political, financial. But this newer form of power is quieter and more enduring. It comes from innovation, from solving problems at scale, from designing platforms that billions of people depend on. This is the kind of influence that Indian origin leaders have cultivated. They're not commanding headlines with bravado. They're building infrastructures that run behind the scenes. Their work affects how people communicate, how businesses operate, how education is delivered, and how the global economy evolves. They don't just lead companies, they shape human behavior through digital ecosystems. Being feared in this context is not about intimidation. It's about recognition. It means your work has grown so impactful that it threatens established norms. It means the systems that once excluded you now have to adapt to include you. It means those who never expected to share the table with you must now listen to your voice. And that shift for many institutions and traditionalists is uncomfortable because it challenges control. It erodes monopoly. It brings in new ideas, new styles of leadership, and new visions for the future. What makes this rise even more powerful is the manner in which it has been achieved. Indian origin tech leaders are not known for being aggressive or loud. Their rise has been marked by patience, quiet, competence, and sustained contribution. They didn't storm the gates. They built value until the gates open. Their leadership style, often more inclusive, more long-term focused, more grounded, has shown that you don't need to dominate to lead. You need to understand, to innovate, and to serve. This evolution in leadership is being acknowledged sometimes with admiration, sometimes with unease. But either way, it is being acknowledged that in itself is a milestone. The fear is not about nationality or identity. It's about the undeniable fact that global influence is being recalibrated. And whenever that happens, it becomes clear that the ones being feared are the ones creating change. Not through confrontation, but through undeniable contribution. When someone fears your rise, it means you've already risen beyond the space they thought you would occupy. It means you've transcended the expectations they had for you, and that more than anything is proof of progress. The increasing presence of Indian origin leaders in global tech companies has often been misinterpreted by some as a threat, as if these individuals are taking over American institutions. This perspective misses the deeper truth. What's happening isn't a hostile takeover, but a valuable contribution to a global system. Indian minds are not replacing innovation from the West. They are enriching it, expanding it, and globalizing it. The rise of Indian talent in leadership positions is a sign of the world becoming more interconnected, more merit-driven, and more inclusive of diverse thought. This is not East versus West. This is the East joining the West in shaping a better, more balanced global future. For many decades, leadership in technology, finance, and policy was heavily Western-centric. Most of the big decisions in innovation and infrastructure were made by people who lived similar experiences, were educated in similar environments, and saw the world through similar lenses. But the challenges we face today are global. Climate change, cybersecurity, data privacy, misinformation, inequality. These problems require leadership that understands complexity, cultural nuance, and systems thinking. Indian origin executives bring a global mindset to these issues, often because they've lived through more than one worldview. They've grown up in developing nations, navigated through scarcity, and then adapted to the speed and scale of the Western business world. That unique blend creates a leadership profile that is deeply effective in today's global context. Companies like Google, Microsoft, Adobe, and IBM are not just American companies anymore. They are global ecosystems with customers, employees, and stakeholders spread across every continent. Their leadership needs to reflect that reality. When an Indian origin CEO makes a decision, it's not just informed by numbers. It's informed by cultural intelligence, empathy for different user experiences, and a commitment to scalable solutions that work for both urban New York and rural Uttar Pradesh. These leaders are not exporting Indian thinking or importing Indian culture into the West. They are integrating the best of both worlds to create something new, something global. This is precisely what makes their leadership so valuable. The world doesn't need narrow solutions anymore. It needs integrated thinking. Indian origin leaders often demonstrate a mindset that is collaborative, not confrontational. They are not trying to win in a zero-sum game. They are trying to build platforms that empower others. Under Satya Nadella, Microsoft didn't just grow. It transformed its culture to be more open, more curious, and more inclusive. Under Sant Pichai, Google invested in digital access for underserved regions, not because it was a PR strategy, but because it was aligned with a long-term vision of inclusive growth. These are not random acts of leadership. They reflect a broader philosophy rooted in global collaboration. The discomfort that some political leaders feel toward this shift is rooted in outdated notions of control. For years, success was framed through the lens of domination. Who controls more resources? Who wins more markets? Who builds the biggest empire? This shift also has a ripple effect far beyond boardrooms. It changes how young people around the world perceive their future. It tells a child in a small Indian town that global leadership is not out of reach. It tells aspiring professionals everywhere that contribution matters more than origin. And it tells the world that when diverse minds come together, the result is not chaos, but progress. This is not about taking sides or claiming supremacy. It is about recognizing that leadership today must reflect the complexity and diversity of the world it serves. Indian origin leaders are not just fitting into this new world. They are helping build it. The world has entered an era where power is no longer measured solely by land, weapons, or financial capital. Instead, power is increasingly defined by intelligence, innovation, and the ability to shape the digital infrastructure that governs modern life. Individuals like Sant Pichai and Satya Nadella have risen not only because they are skilled engineers, but because they possess a rare combination of strategic vision, emotional intelligence, and global awareness. These are the qualities required in a world where decisions are no longer made in isolation. Running a trillion-dollar company today requires an understanding of global geopolitics, cultural nuances, ethical complexities, and technical challenges. Indian origin leaders often bring this holistic perspective. Many of them were raised in a culture that values adaptability, perseverance, and collective progress. They understand both scarcity and abundance. They've lived in the margins and now operate in the center of power. The reason this model of leadership generates discomfort in traditional power circles is because it shifts the center of gravity. It upends the long-standing belief that influence comes from military might or territorial dominance. Instead, it shows that the future will be determined by those who can innovate, ethically scale solutions globally, and adapt quickly. The fear that some political figures express when talking about foreign talent in tech is actually a fear of losing relevance. It's the realization that influence is no longer earned through force, but through intellectual excellence. What adds to this tension is that these leaders are not loud or confrontational. They are often quiet, thoughtful, and deeply focused. They don't fit the old mode of power which was associated with dominance and bravado. Their power is subtle but far-reaching. They are reprogramming the future literally and figuratively, and that makes them even more formidable. Intelligence in today's world is about more than just technical know-how. It is about vision, ethics, and the ability to lead people through complexity without losing clarity or purpose. That is the kind of intelligence Indian origin leaders are demonstrating, and it is the kind that is redefining what it means to be powerful in the modern spirit.